Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
So, guys, as we get going, as usual, we'll ask you to subscribe if you haven't subscribed for updates on both Evolutionary Energy Arts and EEARTS, and just double check to make sure you are subscribed. If you start noticing you're not getting any notifications,
If you're not getting notifications, come check on us.
absolutely. And do check out evolutionaryenergyarts.com to learn more about us and other things that we do when we're not making videos, which is most of the time in reality. And we do want to thank our Patreons and those over at Ko-Fi, where you could do a one-time donation to support the channel, or monthly, just like Patreon. And also Medicinal Foods, great products for helping you detox, boost the immune system. Use coupon code EEA and you'll get a discount. There's a link on every video. So we've been getting all these blurbs from BG on a regular basis, and I know it's painful to watch. I know many people, it's tough to watch them at times.
Yep.
But here we have yet another admission. It's amazing, the admissions. And then, and now 198 countries. When the next plague upon the land comes, or whatever they want to call it, a reoccurrence of the old one, or the existing one, the mutation, whatever you want to call it, they're putting this guy in charge of 198 countries around the globe. And so I just listen to him.
One of the people asks about the Mark from New York. What about mental health? What do we know about what the pandemic's effect was on mental health? Well, the numbers are pretty scary. I'm not an expert in that area, but you just look at suicide alone, sort of the ultimate awful number as a measure. You look at, opioid addiction, we were looking like we were getting on the right path, and then it goes back up. So clearly being cooped up, the uncertainty, just less social contact. And people say the numbers in young people are particularly scary. And yet, where's that new capacity? Are there things where you combine human therapy with computer-based therapy that are promising? I sure hope so, but it's not an area that I've learned enough about.
Okay, so he's not an expert. It almost looks like he's got a little horn starting in the middle of the head, or maybe he's going to have an aneurysm or something. I'm not really sure. But he comes out and he says he's not an expert. The numbers with young people were particularly scary. Yes, it made a lot of people depressed. It caused a lot of suicide. Earlier, he had stated, well, we thought it was going to be really bad, but it turned out to be, kind of like a flu, not exactly, and just affected the seniors. And it particularly hit the young people, making them suicidal and depressed. Hello. And he talks about, not an expert in that area. Why is he getting put in charge of 198 countries around the world when it comes to pandemics? What credentials does Bill Gates really have when they say, trust the experts, listen to the experts, listen to the science? His education, well, he's got an IQ of 160, so he's classified as a genius. Not surprising. If he's a genius, couldn't he have not understood where this was going to go? Well, I don't doubt that he is a genius, and I don't doubt that he understood where it was going to go. So what's the alternative there? Let that sink in for a second. He scored 1590 out of 1600 in his college SATs, but he dropped out of Harvard University at age 20 and returned 30 years later to be given an honorary Doctor of Laws degree. Not medicine. Does he have a medical degree? No, he does not have a conventional medical degree. Then why is he in charge of pandemic situations across the globe for basically the entire globe?
What's really scary too, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because even if he did have a medical degree, all the information that we're getting from the experts and the professionals isn't panning out quite right.
No, absolutely. And you got to recognize that the allopathic school of medicine, in many ways, it comes out of Rockefeller U, and that's, a whole other situation that we have talked about in videos before. So right here is putting him in charge. Why would you put him in charge? Other than the fact that he is who he is. He's a billionaire that invented Microsoft systems. So with a large percentage of the population, he can go and read anything that he wants of anybody's around the globe. Besides the fact that he's such a rich person, what credentials does he have? Because apparently he doesn't have any. Then why is the leadership of the world putting him in charge? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any logical sense using their own logic, which this is something we've been discovering as we go along. The logic that they give us today doesn't make sense in just a short while. We just have to wait a little bit and it'll come out. And then they're still trying to use it. Talk about the definition of insanity.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's to the point where everything has become so crystal clear as far as what their intentions are. And in some ways, I think that they use that too. They know that we know, but they keep doing it. It's like a really bad narcissistic relationship we have going on here.
This is like driving a used car around the block and both bumpers fall off and the salesman says, see, you're going to get better gas mileage.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, speaking of gas mileage, gas lighting all over the place.
This is exactly, they're just banking on our stupidity and our naivete. They're banking on the fact that we won't question them because they're the quote-unquote experts who are not really experts at all. And here we see BlackRock's $9 billion star stock picker just turned bearish. Now, if you want to watch how things are going to go, watch BlackRock and watch, these real power brokers that, they know what's going to happen because it's just simply part of the next plan. It's part of the next stage. And so, yes, obviously, we could see this. Most people are starting to realize it, even people that don't pay attention to anything but say, Miley Cyrus and whoever else is out there in whatever popular pop rappers are out there, popular actors, actresses, people that are constantly wrapped up in the glam, which again, it's all sorcery to a degree. It's all spells, as we're taught in school, spelling.
And I wish we were literally taught in school how to manipulate the ether like they do.
But nobody really writes in cursive anymore, do they?
No, it's really strange too, isn't it?
But there is most definitely different curses upon the land. As we see, the inflation situation barreled ahead at 8.3% in April from a year ago, remaining near 40-year highs. Everything, and some of this is coming in higher than expected, but not for you guys that have been following these situations and following channels that are out there. The lunatic fringe. We are proudly the lunatic fringe because we've been saying this for years, and apparently, even though they could label us the lunatic fringe, we're actually way more on target than BG has been on target, and all these other ones that are telling us stuff that they contradict just a year later or less.
I know, it just gets so frustrating at a certain point. I mean, no wonder people's health is just going down the toilet.
Well, some people's, yes. Prices are going up so fast that there's one restaurant they're using stickers on the menu. Oh my, yeah. Oops, sorry. Imagine getting a menu handed you. Are you gentlemen ready yet to order? No, just give us 5 more minutes. Okay. And then 2 minutes later, she comes by, peels the stickers off, plasters them up. Everything went up 20%. Are you guys ready yet? Yeah, we'll take
Yeah, you better do it now.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way we're heading. War and weather sent food prices soaring. Now, China's harvest is uncertain. And this article is good because it touches on a few different things. The situation in China is one in which they are looking at a decrease in the harvest, but yet when you look at it, as this article touches on, they have more money than any other country on the globe proportionately. And they've already stockpiled so much food ahead of really us getting into the thick of things, that this is obviously where they want the power structure to be. This is where they want the new world to come to be centered all around. And this gets into this. Western experts analyzing satellite photos of Chinese crops have generally been less worried than Chinese officials. U.S. Department of Agriculture estimated last month that China's wheat crop is going to be about 3% smaller than last year's. And of course, you don't ever want to go smaller. I don't think it's going to be a disaster, says this one expert. Yeah, 3% smaller is not as scary as what we're seeing in some other areas. And when you cut big whole countries out, like Ukraine, and you have grain just basically feeding the rats in the silos where it could be feeding people, that's not a good situation. But as our good friend, brother David Devine over at DAP 2030 would say, China understands this because they have their continuous history that goes back farther than like any other country, where they understand what happens when food supplies get tight. Well, the citizens get tight. And in France, if we go back to France at the time of the French revolutions, there was a lot of very close shaves that were given out to the proletariat, to the top officials, including actually, the kingdom himself ended up getting shaved, so to speak. So they understand all this, and they're going to weather the storm. And again, this is a purposeful shift in power over in that direction. Household debt nears 16 trillion despite rising rates and inflation. So yeah, credit card debt rose, and this people are being forced. Now, we were promised, or sort of dangled a carrot, that you might have student loans forgiven in entirety, which really is not that big of a nut at the federal level. And it kind of amazes me how, you'll get lawmakers that will talk about this and then say, oh, we can't afford to do that. But then they just give $40 billion over to a war in Ukraine. Student loan debt climbed by $14 billion in the first quarter, 6.5% increase there as well. So, it's just so obvious now what's going on. People are starting to catch on, but not quick enough. Gas prices are at fresh record highs, and we have a diesel shortage that's going to send stuff to mind-blowing highs. And if you look at that, that's yeah. I mean, we're just getting started with this, guys. This is just getting started.
I know. I mean, this stuff is, we're hitting the fringe part of it, and we're going to be in the thick of it real soon.
Skipping meals, racking up debt, how inflation is squeezing single parents. It's squeezing most people besides the elite. Even some of the wealthier people that aren't quote unquote the elite are feeling it now. And, while skipping meals, if you time it properly, it could actually extend your life. Mm-hmm. And it depends, again, on what you are eating. And as we see, as over 1 million have died, this is what they're saying. This is, again, what they're saying. And there will be somebody that says, there's nothing out there. There's nothing out there. Well, there are things out there. There are things out there. There are little spiky things that are floating around in the air. Of course, we know the reality is never what the official story is that we are given. But yeah, there are things out there. And of course, the numbers can be twisted in any way, shape, or form to suit any personal agenda that's out there. So that's pretty obvious too. But meanwhile, billionaires have gained 1.7 trillion. This was actually like the largest consolidation of wealth that we really have ever seen in a 2-year period. So when you look to why BG is being put in charge, and you just look at the wealth that BG has and the IQ, if there ever was a Dr. Evil.
I know, he's right there.
Yeah, he would make a good one because, I mean, he's kind of like Mr. Rogers in some way, but he's got this like psychotic little thing going. Yeah, I mean, he would be a great villain in an Austin Powers film. Meanwhile, we know 90% of nations around the globe are planning a central bank digital currency. And again, digital currency in my mind is let's all agree upon something that's not real. Well, it's not real if there's nothing tangible backing it anyway. So we do know, that things like the dollar, the euro, etc., if it's not backed by gold, which we can agree upon has some sort of intrinsic value, most would. And from what Cindy has gotten, it actually has a life extension value as well as a value in boosting consciousness.
Well, yeah, I mean, all of our precious metals and even our stones and gems, all of that stuff is very important to consciousness.
Think about this too. What if there was, as the Sumerian scrolls say, and Sumerian cuneiform writing, and that we've found with those tablets, and they talk about these beings, these mighty beings that come from elsewhere. They come to Earth. They get humankind to become a slave for them, and they just basically state right out there. It's a mining operation. It's all about pillaging a planet of its natural resources. Well, what are they going to give us in return for the natural resources that they're taking? Central bank digital currency. In other words, numbers that mean nothing. In return for where is all the gold going? Where is the gold in Fort Knox? Have we seen it? Has gold left the planet? Has precious resources left the planet? Has DNA left the planet? Have there been organs that have been harvested and left the planet? Think about all these things. Think about what we see. If these beings truly viewed us as slaves, and then take a look at how even the founding fathers, about half of them had slaves when they were talking about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but they didn't mean it for one particular race. That's just, that's another definition that we could apply to the word insanity. But yet, where did they learn that behavior from? Well, again, if we look to psychotic behavior and how it flows on down, unfortunately, often from parent to child, and abuse that happens from parent to child, child becomes parent, child abuses the way he learned. What if humanity had adopted the ways of these powerful beings that were here and were ruling us, directly over us? Remember, kingship was given from on high. On high where? Well, up there. Just look up there, out there. Not here. Comes from out there.
I know. It's a matter of just changing your perspective slightly. And when you do that, a lot of things start to make sense.
Absolutely, yeah. The creator of all that there is not really going to be found floating around on a cloud with a long, white, fluffy beard playing a harp. This is what we start to realize is that, yes, of course, there's extraterrestrial and interdimensional life all around us all the time. And just look to the indigenous peoples around the globe again. If you ask the Dogon tribe, where do you guys really come from? They'll point up to the stars. And that's in Africa. And we get the same thing from indigenous people all around the world. They all talk about these beings that come from the stars. They all talk about having ancestors that come from the stars. Obvious. It's just obvious. But again, the controllers want you to think that this is all there is. This is all there is. There's nothing else. There's just us. And they're giving you trickle disclosure because they don't want you knowing that they're already being controlled by non-human entities. Britain has pledged to defend Sweden if the country came under attack, with Prime Minister Boris Johnson expected to sign a very similar deal with Finland later on Wednesday. So Sweden and Finland are thinking of joining NATO following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Well, anyway, this works. If they're pledging that, it's the same thing. So they're most certainly getting ready to pull the next card from the stack. Meanwhile, we have Mercury going retrograde, and that again is a perfect situation for all these things to go into a chaotic spiral. And also, where it is retrograde it's going to again be all about the monetary system and new economics.
And things are going to be scrambled, confusing for a little while, so hang on to your hats.
70% of House Republicans voted to send $40 billion to Ukraine last night. And meanwhile, look at all these. Gasoline's up 43.6%. Used cars 22.7%, and you can see on down the line. And meanwhile, we are giving away money. They're giving away your tax money. Yep, they're giving away your tax money. Which means it's your time. The time that you spent working. And here we see Marjorie Taylor Greene said last night, $40 billion for Ukraine, but there's no baby formula for American mothers and babies. Stop funding regime change and money laundering scams. Absolutely. I mean, I gotta agree with her there.
I know, it just gets so so bothersome when they keep saying, oh, don't worry, so-and-so is going to fix it. You'll see. And well, this is what we keep seeing.
Yeah. And again, and they didn't say what percentage of Democrats, because usually when it comes to funding the war machine, the military-industrial complex, it's both parties. Absolutely. And again, there's always this perception, but it's not really necessarily accurate. And again, they get us to just pull one lever. If you ever went into like the old days, the old voting booths, you could pull one lever and it would be all Republican or all Democrat instead of picking and choosing. And for many people, they just want the easiest way out all the time. So they'll just do that regardless of the item. And that's really, really sad. But again, in my mind, it's none of the above when it comes to the choices that we see. Two parties? Oh, you got a choice. Two parties, yeah. Bought and paid for with this ideology or bought and paid for with that ideology.
Mm-hmm. One or the other.
Yeah, anyway, it's bought and paid for. Mm-hmm. Ukraine blocks Russian gas flow. Now, this is from RT. So, each is saying the other's blocking the gas flow. Ukraine will be saying Russia's doing it, and Russia's saying Ukraine's doing it. Anyway, you look at it, the gas flow is blocked. China says that they warned a U.S. warship as it transited the Taiwan's Strait. Because, again, China views Taiwan as part of it. So it would be like going from the mainland to one of the islands off the coast of the U.S., for instance, But again, this is just part of that build-up. China surrounds Taiwan for massive invasion rehearsal drills. I still kind of feel like before they do that, there might be something bigger that happens in total. Because if they do that, but then you never know how they want to plan this out. In 2005, a Chinese general said, Taiwan doesn't really mean much when you get down to it. We need to control Australia, Canada, or the U.S. if we want to feed our people long term. So if they did go and take Taiwan, they could be banking that the U.S. is going to do not much. Or maybe, stand on the periphery and again, they're going to just kind of feed weapons into Taiwan, just like, Russia and the Ukrainian situation, which makes for more profits for the military-industrial complex. They get to get rid of all the old stuff, and they get to buy themselves some new toys to play with.
How exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, more sons, daughters, brothers, fathers, they lose their lives and they have themselves traumatized. This system is just pure insanity. And I think more and more people are waking up to that. And Sita agrees that she's moaning in the background in dreams. Russia accuses Lithuania of extremism. When we usually look right before there's a military action somewhere, there's a lot of these type of things going back and forth, accusals. So keep your eyes on the little Baltic nations for sure. Iran's new homegrown satellite snaps images of the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters there in the Persian Gulf. So, the technology is there on both sides to have a horribly bloody escalation. And here we see talking about escalations. And is this just, more loose, for lack of a better word, or is something really truly building? As you see, escalation: 10,000 Polish-Lithuanian troops to enter Ukraine, 20,000 Ukrainians on the Belarusian border. And, and it talks about the U.S.'s $40 billion to help the buildup. Because we were just simply talking about how Russia was accusing Lithuania, and then we see, this right there. And then we see over here, UK Secretary of Defense Ben Wallace stated UK is willing to backfill lending jets in a wartime scenario. They're going to be used for fighting. I don't think you're necessarily expecting to get them all back to Poland, right? If the country decides to transfer its 28 MiGs, again, get rid of the old MiGs and get some new stuff in. And Poland offered the U.S. a similar deal in February, which was declined, or really was it? So then we see Poland's decision to donate 232 of its T-72 M1 tanks. Now, that's the old Soviet Union ones. So they are actually the second place to the U.S. when it comes to who has donated the most military equipment. As you see, Poland in the green. Now, that does make them a primary target, too, when things start to spill out of control. Belarusian Defense Ministry has accused the deployment of military forces, or announced. Belarusian Defense Ministry has announced the deployment of military forces, including air defense systems and artillery units, to the borders of Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Ukraine, due to Belarusian claims that these countries are preparing an aggression against Belarus. Well, that makes that other article seem like it might be actually a little bit on. And we have a single round from a firearm shot into the window of Republican Virginia Attorney General's office, Jason Miyares. So you're going to see a lot of these random acts, unfortunately. And then, of course, they always lead to the wanting to control all the weaponry of everyone out there. The Liberals have sneakily brought back the gun registry. This is from Toronto Sun, so this is up in Canada, where, who knows, maybe Canadian Prime Minister here, Trudeau, maybe he'll get a position for life up in Canada. After all, he is a little lapdog for you-know-who, WEF. Canadian beekeepers, sticking to the Canadian theme here, suffer higher than usual winter kill numbers. And again, it could be anything that's out there. We don't know what's up in those funny clouds that give you tic-tac-toe patterns.
I know, it's really depressing because they come out with more and more studies about what's even in our bodies, what's in our food. And I don't think there's anywhere on Earth anymore where they don't find those microplastics.
Yes. Absolutely, and so there's always one or two people every couple of videos that will say, you guys just are focusing on the negative, it's so depressing. Well, yeah, if you do feel that way, then just don't watch Evolutionary, watch EEARTS, because we're gonna just focus on the spiritual over there, and we'll keep everybody updated over on Evolutionary with everything that's going on. As far as the news, because we feel like we need to still cover it to give people perhaps a little glimpse of thinking outside of boxes that maybe they haven't thought of before. So again, it's all part of waking up the masses as much as possible. And if you are awoken to the point where you don't want to hear the news, that's fine. And just focus more on the spiritual side, and that's what we're doing. That was our original intention with EEARTS, but then when Evolutionary had two strikes and they were going to shut it down, we had to kind of cover everything on EEARTS. So the temperature is going to be much higher than average from Texas, eastern New Mexico, southwestern Oklahoma, all of Louisiana as well. And if you look over here, that's some intense heat coming up through the midsection. And this is going to add to the drought in so many ways. From what I saw, again, we are basically up towards the Texarkana area, it's toasty. I mean, it's really toasty and well above normal. This is like, I mean, we're going to be at 94, 95, 96. So that's more like the worst of August. And again, we do know that the food supply is being attacked in every way, shape, or form. And this could definitely add to that. And speaking about drought and drought-ravaged California, water use is up dramatically. And, you know, we're going to have rationing of food. We're going to be faced with that. Perhaps fuel. Wouldn't be surprised at all. And if you're in the West and many other areas, water.
Oh, I know. That's something that's going to become a hot commodity. And unfortunately, it doesn't really have to be that way. But since this is all created from entities that are in control, we all have to sort of adjust as best as we can. And those are the things we like to try to help with wherever we can.
Historic chills in Idaho and Boise. Cold records still plaguing BC, British Columbia. Cold and average April in Thailand. Global diesel shortage, like we were saying. Look at those freaking gas prices. Man, that's nauseating. Colorado snowpack is melting at a ridiculous rate. Yes, if we continue on the rate we're at, we're probably looking at a complete meltout by the end of May or beginning of June. That's too soon. So drought conditions are likely to worsen. This is what they're talking about. And, you know, could be the worst wildfire year in Colorado's history. Yes, Colorado. We did have a family member that had reached out to me and said, we're not in drought, we're fine. But in actuality, if you go to Drought Monitor, there is, there we go, Drought Monitor. And it depends on, too, what happens. So if you look, this is Colorado. So, you know, you can see down here along the Mexico border, that's exceptional. And then when we go into the reds, we're in extremes. Severe is orange. So there's quite a bit of severe drought ongoing, and then abnormally dry conditions. So yeah, if you're in the Northeast up in here, it's oh, I'm looking at Colorado there. That's going way up into the Dakotas. Sorry, guys. So over here, you could see again, you know, it's pretty much everywhere. You're either abnormally dry or moderate drought or severe drought. And again, now that's the border right there with New Mexico and Colorado, and then over into Kansas and Nebraska. You know, the weather's just been crazy, period. And it, again, is something that can definitely, in my mind, be not natural.
You know, I think rain catchment would be a good idea for anybody, anywhere to get into.
Absolutely. Yes, we will be putting up some gutters soon on one of the areas that doesn't have gutters, and getting rain barrels, even though we should be getting 3 to 6 inches of rain every single month of the year. You don't know. Unseasonably heavy rain hits Queensland, Australia as well. And there were 3 people in the floods that happened there that lost their lives. Terrifying footage of a massive landslide in China's Guizhou, I guess you would say. And there is video there that shows it as well. 1 dead and 2 missing after that. That's definitely a scary condition. And we had a 6.8 magnitude that jolts northwestern Argentina. No tsunami and no loss of life there, thankfully. And then we did have an X-class flare that you see right here. And okay, at the moment when we started this, there was some effects being shown. Now it's cleared out. KP has been actually relatively low, so very, very interesting to watch everything that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, keep an eye on your body to have reactions, because it will whenever the sun is doing what it does.
Absolutely. And the other thing that is really, really striking is the sunspot activity. Because again, this is the predicted value. So as we look at where we're at now, it's so high above. It's so high above. Way above the predictions. That's really interesting. And again, you know, many have taken this, that this is source. This is God with the big G. You know, who knows? We've been given the timeline of more like the mid 2040s for the big solar flash. But hey, maybe it'll change. Maybe it'll be earlier. And when that does happen, all the technology that you see will be toast.
It'll be gone.
Absolutely, it'll be bye-bye. And before we say goodbye, we want to thank you guys again for being part of this family. Make sure you guys are as prepared as possible for anything that's going to happen. Reach out to neighbors, family members, have a plan for these times, and it would be a good idea to get planting as much as you can, whatever that looks like.
Yes, become resourceful. Yes.
Absolutely. Much love. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.